Have you ever found yourself apologizing for a decision that needed no apology? Have you ever sat across from someone, friend, family, colleague, and watched their face twist with disapproval while your mouth kept moving, kept justifying, kept offering reasons you didn't owe, explanations you didn't believe, just to make them comfortable with your choice? Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than when you entered it, even though you got exactly what you wanted, because the price was your silence, your dignity, your right to simply be? If you have felt this shrinking, this constant translation of yourself into languages others can approve of, then this story is for you. Because sometimes the freedom we seek is not found in being understood. Once in a quiet university town, where old brick buildings held the weight of tradition and expectation, there lived a young man named Thomas. If a friend needed to borrow money, Thomas explained why he could help this time, but not last time. If a professor questioned his thesis topic, Thomas explained his reasoning for 3 hours, rewriting his proposal 3 times to address concerns he didn't share. If his mother asked why he wasn't visiting more often, Thomas explained his schedule, his stress, his intentions, weaving elaborate tapestries of justification that left them both exhausted. He never simply said no. He believed that good people made themselves understood. He believed that if he could just find the right words, the right tone, the right sequence of reasons, he could prevent anyone from ever being disappointed in him. But slowly, without realizing it, Thomas's voice stopped belonging to him. His sentences grew longer and more careful, preparing defenses for choices that needed no defense, inventing better explanations for moments that had already passed. His authentic self became buried under layers of qualification. When asked his opinion, he offered 3 perspectives first, to prove he had considered all sides, before daring to share his own. When making a decision, he consulted 5 people, not for wisdom, but for cover, for the comfort of shared blame if things went wrong. The bold essays he once wrote became cautious, footnoted, apologetic. The friendships he maintained felt conditioned, maintained by constant maintenance, by the endless labor of being palatable. His father looked at him with tired eyes and said, "Thomas, my son, you spend so much time explaining yourself that I no longer know who you actually are." Thomas always gave the same small smile and replied, "I just want to be clear, Dad. I just want everyone to understand." One day, he promised himself, "I will find the perfect words." But that day never came. And Thomas grew quieter and quieter even as he spoke more and more. One autumn afternoon, the leaves burning gold against gray skies, Thomas received news that would change everything. Not just a job calling, studying the very subject that had awakened his mind as a child, the work that made him feel alive in ways his cautious life had not allowed. He knew immediately. Before he could share his joy, she sighed and said, "Abroad? But what about your sister's wedding next summer? What about?" Thomas felt the familiar tightening in his chest. The old machinery engaged automatically. He began to explain. He detailed the timeline, the flexibility, the return flights he would book, the video calls he would make, the way this opportunity would eventually benefit the family. The stop. The word came from somewhere outside him, or deep inside. He wasn't sure. Silence stretched across the line. "Thomas," his mother said. He sat in his small apartment, looking at the acceptance letter on his desk, the foreign stamp in the corner, the signature that represented a door opening, and he realized he had a choice. He could spend the next hour, the next day, the next month, constructing an elaborate bridge of reasons designed to carry his mother across her disappointment into acceptance. Or he could simply stand where he was. "I'm going, Mom," he said. "I love you. And I'm going." He hung up the phone. His hands shook. His stomach churned with the guilt so familiar it felt like home. He had not explained. He had not justified. He had not performed the labor of making his choice palatable. He had simply chosen. And in that silence, in that absence of explanation, Thomas finally heard himself. The next morning, exhausted and exhilarated, Thomas did something he had not done in years. He visited his neighbor, Mrs. Okonkwo, a retired diplomat who lived in the apartment below his, who smoked thin cigarettes on the fire escape. and spoke to him sometimes in the stairwell about books and weather and the peculiar loneliness of thoughtful people. She was on the fire escape when he arrived. She did not look surprised to see him. "Thomas," she said, gesturing to the metal chair beside her, "you look like a man who has stopped running." He sat down. The city spread below them, indifferent and magnificent. "Mrs. Okonkwo, I don't understand what I'm doing. I made a decision. I didn't explain it. I feel guilty. I feel free. I feel like I'm doing everything wrong. Why does silence feel louder than all my words ever did?" Mrs. Okonkwo lit a cigarette. Watch the smoke rise and dissolve. "Thomas, look at this smoke. It moves. It twists. It tries to go everywhere at once. It explains nothing. It simply rises. And yet, it reaches the sky." She turned to him. "You have been smoke that apologizes for rising. You have been trying to secure permission for your own existence. But here is. I want to share a story about a man named Thomas, a story that might feel very familiar to you." Thomas was exhausted, not from his work or his studies, but from the constant, draining effort of explaining himself to everyone. His life was a performance, a never-ending series of justifications to make others feel comfortable with his choices. One day, he met Mrs. Okonkwo, a retired diplomat. She told him something that changed everything. "What I learned in 40 years of diplomacy is that the people who demand explanations are rarely satisfied by them. They simply demand more, and the people who love you do not need your reasons. They need your presence." She gave him a challenge. For 7 days. Practice radical economy with his words. When questioned, say only what is necessary. "I have decided. This is what I need. I understand your concern." No elaboration, no defense. Just let the silence do its work. Thomas was terrified. "What if they think I'm arrogant? What if they think I don't care?" he asked. Mrs. Okonkwo smiled. "You have spent your whole life trying to control what others think," she said. "It has exhausted you, and it has failed. Let them think. Their thoughts are not your responsibility." The first test came that very evening. His best friend, Marcus, called about a fellowship Thomas had won to go abroad. "Kind of sudden, right?" Marcus said. "I thought we were going to start that project together." Thomas felt that old urge rise up, the need to smooth things over, to make Marcus okay, to shrink himself to keep the peace. But this time, he took a breath. "I know," he said. "I care about you. And I'm going." The silence on the line was heavy. Marcus, confused and hurt, pushed back. "That's it? That's all you're going to say?" Thomas sat with the discomfort. He didn't rush to fix it. "I'll miss you," he said finally. "And I'm going." Marcus hung up. The guilt was overwhelming. Thomas felt like a failure, a selfish friend. He almost called back to apologize and explain it all away. But he remembered Mrs. Okonkwo's words and let the feeling pass. The next day, his advisor questioned him for declining a prestigious internship. Thomas simply said, "I have other plans." He didn't justify it. He just stood in his choice. His advisor was taken aback. But Thomas walked out of that office feeling lighter than air. Then his sister called crying, accusing him of abandoning the family by missing her wedding. She listed all the ways he was letting everyone down. Thomas listened. He let her words land without arguing. "I hear you," he said calmly. "I love you. I won't be there." She hung up, furious. Thomas felt sad, genuinely sad, but not anxious or guilty. He was simply sad, and within that sadness, he felt a strange sense of freedom. Then, on the 4th day, a shift. His mother called, not to demand more reasons, but to say, "I've been thinking. When did you start apologizing for being alive?" "I don't need your reasons, Thomas. I just miss knowing you." They talked for an hour, truly talked. For the first time in a long time. As the weeks went on, Thomas transformed. He stopped asking permission for his preferences. He stopped translating himself into a version others could easily digest. He discovered that some people drifted away, unable to handle his newfound boundaries. But he also found that others drew closer, relieved to be free from the unspoken pressure of constantly needing to approve of him. His writing became sharp, clear, and unapologetically his own. A publisher took notice. His silences became powerful, filled with intention instead of anxiety. When he spoke, His words had weight. He was no longer a man explaining himself into existence. He was a man who existed, and he let that be enough. One evening, Mrs. Okonkwo visited. Looking at the packed boxes and the man sitting straighter than she'd ever seen him, she asked, "So, Thomas, did your world fall apart when you stopped explaining yourself?" Thomas let out a deep, genuine laugh. "No," he said. "In fact, I think it's the first time my world has actually held together." Mrs. Okonkwo nodded, raising her glass. "You see, the great illusion is that we must be understood to be loved. But love that requires translation is not love. It is a transaction. And you, my dear, have stopped paying for what should be freely given. So let me ask you, my friend, are you like Thomas? Are you exhausting yourself trying to translate your soul for others? Are you constantly apologizing for your own existence, shrinking your truth to fit into other people's expectations? Remember this. The people who truly belong in your life will not need a map to find you. Your choices are valid because you chose them. Your boundaries are real because you set them. Your life is yours. You do not owe the world an explanation for who you are becoming. Your silence is an emptiness. It's a fullness that needs no translation. Your presence isn't a performance. It is a gift. Protect your voice. Honor your choices. Trust your right to simply be, because when you finally stop explaining yourself, you finally become yourself. Thanks for watching.